Hey everyone, this is a RC Car Shock Dyno that I've been working on that I would like to demonstrate for everyone. If you are not familiar with what a shock dyno is, it's just a way to visually represent what a shock absorber is doing. We can measure the caster and camber and toe and give it a numeric value, but up until now there's really no way to compare your front shocks to the rears, or left and right, or to your car and your buddy's car. So like I said, this just gives you a visual representation of what your shock absorber is doing. So the shocks I'm using here happen to be from a Revo. I've got a couple of Revos lying around. So to get the dyno set up, you extend this. This is the load cell up top here. So you want to extend this all the way and then drop it back down a couple of millimeters right there. Lock this down. Don't need to kill it, just firm. And then these are some little shims just to keep things stabilized. If your rod ends are all loose, that will actually show up in the dyno. So that just these shims or wedges take the play out. Okay, so I believe we are all set up here. I'm going to swing this over just a little bit. And we are going to push the little button that's on the top of the dyno here. And it'll give us a graph. This is called a circle graph or a football graph. From here to here is the compression of the shock absorber. This is compression, this is rebound at the bottom. So it's kind of confusing to visualize this, but depending on the speed of the piston going through the fluid, it will naturally increase and decrease the force that is being applied. So this is when it's going through the shock fluid very quickly, and this is the transition from compression to rebound. So this is where it's going to get confusing. So in the dyno here, right now, let's call this 3 o'clock. The top, we're going to call that 12. That's 9. And that'll be 3. So the dyno spins at a constant speed. So there's a couple pulleys and a belt there. But if you see at 12, I'm moving the pulley a fair amount, but yet the yoke here is not moving up and down very much. And it does the same at the 3 o'clock position. I'm sorry, at the 6 o'clock position. I'm able to turn this quite a fair amount, and the yoke is not turning. But now, if we go to the 9 o'clock position, I'm moving this the same amount. The pulleys, we can see that we have a lot of movement in that yoke. And then naturally it does the same at 3 o'clock. Okay. So this point would represent 9 o'clock as it's going through the motion. So this would be 9 o'clock of the compression stroke. This would be 3 o'clock of the rebound. And this is the transition from compression to rebound, rebound compression. And like I was demonstrating, it's very low velocity here. So that's why the load is very small here and here, compared to the velocity is a little over 100. And this is measuring in grams of force. So a little over 100 grams of force in the compression and the rebound. So this shock absorber is even, we'll call it. Okay, so let's put another shock absorber on. Again, this is another Revo, but this will work on any 10th scale damper. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this shock has more compression than it does rebound. So that's right exactly on the 200. And let's call this 100. And which is correct. So the way I've done this is there's a shim up inside on the piston that actually acts like a valve, a one-way check valve. So I have more compression resistance than rebound resistance. So that is exactly what that shock is doing. Here we go. Here's another one. Okay, let's put our shims in there. Here's our button. So I'm not sure if this has a smaller piston hole or thicker fluid, but you can see that this is much heavier than the first blue one. Shock 1 is blue, shock 2 is red. But you can see that just like number 1, the blue line, they're equal, 400, 400. So I have one last shock here. Let's see what this one does. Here we go. So I'm not sure what I have in this shock, but you can see on the green line, it's the same as the previous shock, number 3, but it has way more resistance when it comes to rebound. Sometimes this graph will make a little erroneous line like that. You just have to try to ignore it. The question is why would you need a shock dyno? So a shock dyno is not going to tell you what the setup is for the track. That's for you to figure out with your caster and camber and toes and springs and shock fluid and combinations. Once you find that perfect combination for your particular track, it would be a very good idea to dyno your shock absorbers, all 4 of them, and record the value. Because there's, it would be possible that you go out while you're practicing and you have a massive crash and you wipe out your whole front end. You want to be able to return your front end to the exact same place it was prior to the crash. So it'd be easy to replace your control arms, tie rods, so on and so forth. But just to make absolutely sure that your dampers are the same, there you go. You have a reading from your last time and you compare it to the first time. Or I'm sorry, you compare it to before the crash to after the crash. It's just a good way to make sure that your dampers are equal, left to right, front to rear. So I really think this would be a very valuable tuning tool. If there's any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section, and we'll go from there. Thank you.